This
The
is
story
the
of a
story of some
girl. Oh my
cards.
God,
It's
you and
October
I,
27th, and we're
you
talking
and I were
about
on the
some
same
spoilers
page.
for some Ixalan with Shane and Steven. And hi, I'm Dave. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Guys That Magic, and today we are going to be taking you through some of our spoilers for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Today is October 27th, and joining me today we have Steven and Shane. Say what's up, boys.
Hello.
What's up, nerds?
So, just as a little bit of a disclaimer, we're only going to be talking about the rares and mythics that dropped today. If you are interested about all of the cards, go ahead and follow us on Instagram because we do go ahead and we post everything there. So make sure you give that a watch. So with that being said, we are going to learn how to read together with some of the names of the cards today. The first card we're going to talk about is Tishana's Tidebinder. This is 2 and a blue for a total of 3 mana. It is a creature merfolk wizard. It's a 3/2 with flash, and it says that whenever it enters the battlefield, counter target activated or triggered ability. If an ability from an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebender remains on the battlefield.
That's a cool merfolk. It's a little counter, baby.
Dude, this card is really dope.
I would say so. If it counters the ability of the artifact, creature, planeswalker, it just blanks that creature, planeswalker, artifact. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude, for as long as the thing stays in play. So, like, not only does it, like, counter the first ability where you're like, nope, but from that point on, it's just like, congratulations on your thing that's just not going to do what it wants to do.
It's just like an empty thing. It's a shell.
It's a shell of its former self. Super important to note, though, is that if it is a creature, it's still going to have a power and toughness. So hopefully, I don't know, it doesn't beat you to death.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, I mean, guys, this card, good.
Dude, good card is good.
See, my only thought about this, though, is that coming in at 3 mana, do we think that this is a little bit awkward whenever it comes to standard? Like, is this too much?
Actually, I think this is just right.
I think we're going to find out with this new set and how impactful merfolks are going to be. Because the blue-white deck is soldiers at the moment. The mono-blue doesn't really... I mean, maybe this goes in mono-blue. But maybe there's going to be a merfolk deck coming out. Who knows?
I was going to say, traditionally, Merfolk are like, at least in Ixalan, they're going to be blue-green. So maybe we can get something going here.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, moving on. We got a couple of manlands that we're going to talk about. The first of which is Restless Ridgeline. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. Boo. It's got an ability where you can tap it for either a red or a green, and it also has another ability that says that you can pay 2, a red, and a green, and it becomes a 3/4 red and green dinosaur creature until end of turn. It is still a land. It also says that whenever it attacks, another target attacking creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and untap that creature.
Dude, these land cycles are going to be pretty dope, I think. I don't know if this is
I
the
mean,
strongest one, but I like it.
I don't know. 4 mana, plus technically, like, this is the 5th land, so you're going to have a lot of mana that you're going to sink into this to make it a 3/4. Like, the +2/+0 is a cool little boost to something else. And yes, that creature does gain, like, pseudo-vigilance and that you are untapping it, but at the same time, this is a lot of mana to sink into this card. Does Gruul want this, like, really mid-rangey play line?
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there was a card that got spoiled that said activated abilities of lands cost 2 less.
Well, that'd be good.
I mean, that could be cool if there is like a lands matter deck or like a man-land style of deck. I just look at it like Gruul is typically traditionally a color that's going to be like kind of beat face-ish. And in this set, I'm seeing it more so as like dinosaur, which is already kind of on the expensive end. I just don't know if this thing has a home. And then like looking at that beyond this, if I'm looking at something like EDH, I just don't think that this is going to be impactful enough.
And you know, I'm actually going to play devil's advocate, and I'm actually going to say I think this does have a lot of impact, just for the reason with so many board wipes running rampant in standard, let alone EDH. I think that having this come onto the field as a 3/4, allowing it to give a buff to something, and, you know, let's just say the board wipe does happen, that creature that gave the +2/+0 is gone, but at least you still have this, and after the board wipe, you're able to still attack, get in for some damage. I see a lot of manlands popping up in standard, and I actually think that they're pretty beneficial.
Yeah. I was going to say, the other thing I like about it is in standard, manlands are a great way to close out games, and later in the game when you're kind of just stalling, this is just a great way to push for damage. I don't know, I kind of like all the manlands in standard at the moment. We'll see.
Well, moving on, we are not done with the manlands. This next one is Restless Anchorage. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for either a white or a blue, or you can pay 1, a white, and a blue for a total of 3 mana. It says until end of turn, Restless Anchorage becomes a 2/3 white and blue bird creature with flying. It is still a land, and it says whenever it attacks, you create a map token.
A little cheaper. Now it's got flying, and you're getting a map. So that's the thing to explore, I believe. Seems pretty good, dude.
I think I like this one a lot more than the card we just talked about.
Me too. Very much.
I mean, better evasion for sure. Love the fact that it gives you a map token on attacking. I love the artwork here because all the ships are like, get out of the way.
It's taken off, dude. Going airborne. Boats don't go airborne.
Yeah, then it'd be an airplane.
Unless they're belligerent.
Or an airboat. Yeah, a
Yeah,
belligerent boat.
callback. Callback. I think this is going to be a lot more relevant talking about standard, though. I can see this being a amazing finisher. Just the fact that it gets flying, and then if you need to have a map token, maybe if you don't even use it to explore, maybe you just use it to what was it? Was it bargain or something? Or you can just sack it for something else. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it does provide that flexibility. And then just like in the color combination here too, Azorius is much more on the controlling aspect of things. So I can see this popping up in maybe like a white-blue control deck that just wants an additional outlet as a finisher. Plus, the map tokens are just going to generate value for you over the course of the game too. So I actually do like this card.
Yeah, you can crack it, explore, and put the +1/+1 on this land if I'm not mistaken. Then you can just bump up this land, big creature.
For those of you who like man lands, we're still not done. This next one here is Restless Vents. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for either a black or a red, and it has an ability that allows you to pay 1, a black, and a red for a total of 3 mana, and it says until end of turn, it becomes a 2/3 black and red insect creature with menace. It is still a land. It says whenever it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. What are our thoughts on this one?
I love it.
Dave, I was going to say, is this your favorite?
This is actually, I think, my least favorite out of the 3 so far.
What? Why? Explain.
I am just not a big fan of this. I don't know. It's a 2/3. It does have menace, so I guess at least it's going to be able to attack in hopefully at least more than once. I just don't think this one's going to be super relevant. And then having to discard and then draw isn't quite as good as being able to draw and then discard. So you don't necessarily know if you're going to be actually filtering your hand to get the better option. You kind of have to do it blind. Filtering, of course, obviously still is a really powerful effect, but I don't know. I think that the white-blue one is just significantly better here, and then the red-green one has the ability to close out the game a little bit faster too.
Yeah, I could see that actually. Hoping and praying, but I will say that card draw wins games, so that's card draw staple on the land is pretty solid. But yeah, you are going to be pitching something that I'm hoping that you're pitching maybe, let's say, a land or something that you don't literally need at all. But yeah, I get it. Discarding first is kind of scary.
You know, I think the only thing I'll touch on these lands, I mean, it sucks that they under tapped. I think that's probably the most unfortunate thing, especially in a EDH style game when you want to go fast. But, you know, I think that, like Shannon and I were discussing on the last one and the one before that, I think that these mid-range kind of cards will help you close out a game. I do agree with David. This one does kind of suck a little bit just because, unfortunately, you have to discard the card before you draw it. So that does suck. I do agree, David.
Maybe in EDH at least, dude. Play some kind of madness deck. That could be fun though.
Next up, we have Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. This is 1 and a red for a legendary creature, Human Knight. It is a 2/2, and it says whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. It also says whenever you discard a card, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until your next end step. A lot to unpack here with this huge drop.
I kind of just thought about something now that I see another card with the discard a card text, just like this in the last land. There's the new mechanic in there called Descend. They care about permanents entering the graveyard, so that could be a good way to trigger Descend.
I mean, it is cool. I do think that this is more so of an enabler rather than a payoff. I mean, obviously, it's relatively cheap, and hopefully, it's going to be fueling the rest of your deck. The first ability feeds directly into the second ability, so it's going to provide you with that card draw. I don't know. Mono red has kind of always existed as a deck. This might slot in and give the deck a little bit of extra reach.
Yes, that seemed like a pretty solid 2-drop.
All right, this card's not great. It's also not bad. I mean, I do like the fact that you're able to basically exile the top card of your library by discarding the card. The +1/+1 counter is really good, especially on the target attacking creature. I do like the fact that you do not have to attack with this. So, David, I do agree that mono red might actually use this and it might slot in. I don't know if it will, just because there's a lot of better 2 slots, I think, with like Bloodthirsty Adversary being at the top of that list. But, you know, it's a cool card. I like it.
This kind of reminds me of like a red version of like a Luminarch Aspirant, where you're putting a +1/+1 counter on something, but you have to discard obviously for it. So it's not a free +1/+1 counter, but that could be pretty powerful on a mono red.
I think that those two cards kind of function a little bit differently. Whenever I look at this card, I'm more so interested in that second ability rather than the first. Although, like, giving something a buff and trample is really nice, especially if you're trying to push damage, which mono red is trying to push damage. My thought there just being like that exile, like that is card advantage stapled onto your 2-drop that is already like helping you attack in. So I don't know. I think that this card is pretty pushed.
I would say so as well.
Yeah, I wonder if this actually takes the Felden slot.
Maybe actually, because the reason why he was so good is if you blocked, like no one wanted to block with him, right? So then you get a bunch of cards exiled. This way, you don't have to actually have him blocked to get the payoff. Yeah, maybe.
Moving on, our next card is Brass's Tunnel Grinder. This is 2 and a red for a total of 3 mana. It is a legendary artifact. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. It also says at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. Whenever it transforms, it comes back as Tecutlan, the Searing Rift. This is a legendary land cave. You can tap it to add a red mana to your mana pool. It also says whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Tecutlan, the Searing Rift, discover X, where X is that spell's mana value.
There's a lot of discard effects we've been seeing so far. Jesus.
I love this card, man.
I'm going to go ahead and be on the opposite end of the spectrum here, and I actually say that this card is not very good.
Yeah.
Go on.
So 3 mana, you cast this thing, you can get its ETB, which is going to be able to hopefully filter your hand. I mean, it says draw that many cards +1, so you're actually going to be net neutral on this. So say, for example, you have 7 cards in your hand, then you cast this, you're going to discard 6, and then you'll draw 7. So, I mean, it kind of does nothing in that regard. And then past that point, you have to wait around for 3 turns in order for this thing to become a land. So from a 3-drop, that's not really going to do anything for me until turn like 6. I'm not necessarily seeing it. If there is a reanimation deck that pops up within the format, this could be pretty solid because it does allow you to discard your entire hand, and there's obviously a lot of other like discard routes that we can take that we're starting to see with like just red in general here. So I could potentially see that. I'm just a little bit worried that this land might, or the land portion of this card might just be a little too slow to be impactful.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Remind me what Discover does.
It's Cascade. So if it's X, so let's say you play a spell that's costing 5. Discover 5 will be flip over to the top of your library until you hit a non-land permanent with 5 or less, and you get to cast that without playing its mana cost. And if you don't, you can just put it in your hand.
So I mean, like the back half of the card is powerful. My concern just being is like this is a really slow effect.
Yeah, I'll give you that. You got to make sure you get all the counters on them, and then flip it. Yeah.
And you also have to make sure that this is actually like being dropped on turn 3, which depending upon how your hand is shaped up at that point, you may not actually want to discard your hand.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
All right, up next we have Kitesail Larcenist. This is 2 and a blue for a total of 3 mana. It is a creature human pirate, a 2/3 with flying and ward 1. It also says that whenever it enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as Kitesail Larcenist remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and lose all other abilities.
Damn. Turn all your commanders into treasure, dude. That seems pretty good. Like, granted, you don't have to crack them. You can just deal with this card and get your thing back, but my goodness.
This
Yeah,
card
that's
is a
pretty good.
bomb.
Yeah, dude. That's wild. That's why I like there's Ward 1. I mean, Ward 1 probably doesn't matter as much in EDH as it does in Standard, but like, this is a problem in Standard for sure.
I don't know. The only thing about this, too, is that, like, with the Ward 1, do consider you just gave him a treasure, so you kind of just gave him the mana to be able to pay for the Ward 1. Of course, if they do that, they're going to end up losing whatever you just created a treasure out of, so that's kind of nice. But, I mean, 3 mana for a 2/3 with flying to begin with is actually fairly solid, and then past that point, this ability is just, like, icing on the cake. It is really important. Or it is really impactful, and I don't know. I think this card can be really nice whenever it comes to like EDH. Blank your opponent's commanders temporarily.
Yeah. Steven, I'm guessing this will go in the Pirate Precon, if I had to guess.
You'll have to find out. Yeah, this card's kind of like reminiscent to me a little bit of like, I guess a worse but kind of so cool Thieving Skydiver. You know, instead of you stealing the artifact or equipment, I guess, you're just kind of like helping yourself out. This is pretty good.
Up next, we have Ojer, Pakpatiq, Deepest Epoch.
You did great, dude.
It is 2 and 2 blue for a total of 4 mana. It's a legendary creature god. It is a 4/3 with flying. It says whenever you cast an instant spell from your hand, it gains Rebound. For those of you who do not remember, Rebound states that you can exile it as it resolves, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast it from exile without paying its mana cost. It then, of course, also says that whenever it dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control with 3 time counters on it. Whenever it comes back tapped and transformed, it's going to enter as the Temple of Cyclical Time. This is a land that you can tap to add a blue mana to your mana pool and remove a time counter from it. You also have the ability to pay 2 and a blues for a total of 3 mana to tap it and transform it. You can only do so, though, if you have no time counters on it and activate only as a sorcery.
I think
Shane, this seems right up your alley.
I was going to say, I think this might be the easiest god we've seen that can flip, I don't know, getting rid of 3 time counters. It just happens when you tap it for mana, and there's ways to like untap the land, tap it again. Like we saw Steve do that a bunch of times in some of our games. Like that's very easy. And I know the stipulation of not having sorcery might be kind of strange, but there are quite a bit of good instant spells that getting another copy of, granted, like a delayed copy, but this seems like a really fun card, dude.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I also think it's funny that on the front side, it's only on instant spells, but you can only do the back side at sorcery speed, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
There you go. Cares about both in different ways.
I don't know, David. Are you not as stoked on it as I am?
I don't actually think that I am. I think that for limited purposes, it's 4 mana for a 4/3 with flying, which makes it good enough to just kind of be played. And then past that point, like the additional upside there, like it's a cool card. It really only carrying it by instance, I think, actually does limit what you could potentially do with this. If it said instant and sorcery, I think that it would be much higher on the card. But only really caring about those instants, I feel like limits it a little bit, and they can also sometimes make things a little bit awkward for you. Not every kind of card is actually really going to work with this. So, for example, like counter spells, they're great instants for you to be able to interact with your opponents, but they're awful with these kinds of effects because they're not actually going to do anything.
I agree.
I think the card is cool. I like it. I'm actually not super high on it.
Well, I think it's got some legs, even though it's a serpent with no legs. But I think there's something here still. I think that the price point is great too. The 4 mana is solid.
Look at that! Look at the tiny people.
Yeah, you're right. That is a huge snake serpent thing. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But is it fantastic? Probably not. But am I intrigued? 100%.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the card is bad. I just don't think this is like a slam dunk A+, like best card of set type thing.
Hey, I'll take a B+ any day, dude. That's still passing. Okay.
All right, up next we have Braided Net. This is 2 and a blue for a total of 3 mana. It is an artifact and says it enters the battlefield with 3 net counters on it. You can tap it and remove a net counter on it. Tap another target non-land permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated for as long as it remains tapped. It also has Craft with Artifact for 1 and a blue. The back half of this card is Braided Quipu, and help me out please in the comments below if I mispronounced that. This is an artifact that you can pay 3 and a blue and tap it to draw a card for each artifact you control, then put Braided Quipu into its owner's library, 3rd from the top.
What? So the back half only does one thing once?
I mean, draw a card for each artifact you control? That can be a lot.
I guess you're right. That could be a lot. That could be a lot.
I mean, like the absolute bare minimum, it's 1 because this is an artifact.
Yeah. Let's hope you're not doing that, but
This card's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It just keeps doing the thing.
3rd from the top.
So it taps down non-land permanent, so it can hit just about everything. And then past that point, it also like blanks its abilities. So that can be pretty good. You're going to shut down the abilities of your opponent's creatures.
Yeah, if you can tap down your opponent's, again, just in commander. Tap down the commander, and if their commander has a relevant ability that maybe they're built around, can't you do that? That's pretty crazy.
I mean, I really love this card in Commander for sure. I think even in Standard, this is something that's going to be like a menace just because this comes down for 3. You wait till your opponent's untap step, and then after the untap step, boom, you tap their creature. Can't really do anything, can't attack, loses all its abilities. And then, obviously, I think now that we get to the EDH standpoint of it, the backside of this can go nuts.
No.
I love that backside. Draw a card for each artifact you control. Oh my gosh.
Are you bummed that it's kind of like stifling your draw a bit, though? Like you're going to draw in 3 turns?
I mean, you
Not
want
really.
this thing back.
Yeah, you want it back.
Yeah, but what if I also want something new?
You're going to draw something new in addition to eventually drawing this back, too. Like, I don't think that's a downside of the card at all. I think that's just additional upside. The only concern that I have on this is, like, The front half of the card does have a limited number of uses, so at a certain point, you are going to have to use the craft with artifact.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, when you craft, you can do it from either the battlefield or your graveyard, so you don't have to sacrifice an artifact that you particularly care about on your battlefield at the moment. So that's nice.
Up next, we have Subterranean Schooner. This is 1 and a blue for an artifact vehicle. It is a 3/4 and says that whenever it attacks, target creature that crewed it this turn explores. This has a crew cost of just 1.
Wow. What?
It
So
pumps the creature that
for
crewed
2
it.
with a crew of 1?
Yeah.
I think this card is potentially one of the best vehicles we've seen in quite a while.
I don't really see literally any downside to this card. That seems
I
good.
mean, most creatures going to be able to crew this thing relatively easily. Considering also on top of that, this is a 3/4 for like 2 mana. It's still a vehicle, so it's not always going to be that 3/4, but I mean, like, that's pretty solid. And then past that point, it's going to have an additional upside of the exploration there. Like, this is a pretty decent card.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no evasion, so it's just luckily it's a 3/4. That's nothing to scoff at. And then whatever you're crewing with, man, it gets bigger.
Good card, great.
Good card, great. Might be, yeah.
I don't know if it's great. I think it's good.
Good card, good / great. How about that, Steven?
No, it's great.
Up next, we have Queen's Bay Paladin. This is 3 and 2 black for a total of 5 mana. It is a creature vampire knight. It is a 5/4 and says, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, return up to 1 target vampire card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. You lose life equal to its mana value. So we get a fun little recursion card.
Bringing stuff back from your graveyard, even with the finality counter, seems really strong. It is 5 mana though.
Just a lot of mana.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this card is actually not good.
You're gonna cast it and it's gonna sit around for a turn, do nothing, and then do something cool.
Well, it's got the ETB for this.
That's true. Never mind.
I just
almost
look at it like you're potentially really going to lose a lot of life on this card, given that like vampires are known for like draining, so they'll be able to gain some life back. But I don't know. It's a little restrictive. Obviously, this needs to be played in like a pretty heavily dedicated vampire deck. I just think there's some potential for you to like really hurt yourself with this card. And since it comes in as a 5-drop, it's kind of slow.
Hey, but in like sealed or draft, if you're building a vampire deck, this could be a bomb.
I mean, I don't know, man. I agree with you, Shane, but I'm with David on this one.
Is this a mech or meh?
I think it is.
Man.
I think it's situationally okay.
I gotta agree.
And then our final card that we're going to be talking about today is not actually new. It is going to be a reprint, but we felt like it was really important for us to bring this up because it's a reprint of some notable worth. It's going for about $35 currently, and that is Resplendent Angel. For those of you who are not familiar with the card, Resplendent Angel is 1 and 2 white for a total of 3 mana. It is a creature angel, a 3/3 with flying. And it says at the beginning of each end step, if you gain 5 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance. It also has an ability where you can pay 3 and 3 white for a total of 6 mana, and it says until end of turn, Resplendent Angel gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink.
I mean, it's a good card. It's expensive for a reason.
Yeah, it's a good card. It was a menace the last go around. Do we think this might be good enough to see play in standard?
There's an angel deck, which I think there might be again. I'll have to talk to Hunter about that. But yeah, totally. It's just great stats. And then, yeah, I mean, like the bottom half is expensive, but there are other cards that can gain you life. So you might not need to pay that, but the deck you're playing this in is probably a mono white anyway, so you don't care at all about those double white pips or triple white pips.
Yeah, I think this is great.
It's tough to talk about reprints that are fantastic because you're just like, yep, the card's good. It was good, still good.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Giada is still in standard, guys.
Gross.
Because, standard takes forever to rotate now.
Spoken like a wise man, Steven.
That is going to wrap it up for spoilers for today. Shane, let's go ahead and start off with you. What was your favorite card, and why is it the Snake God?
That's not fair, dude. I'm torn. I think the Snake God's great. I also think that this Manland, Azorius Manland, is fantastic, but I'll stay with the Snake God.
I'm sorry, say the name. What card?
Ojer, Pakpatiq.
All right, you heard it.
David, what's your favorite card?
My favorite card of the day. This one's going to be kind of tough. I tell you what, I'm actually going to go with the first card that we talked about from today, and that being Tishana's Tidebinder.
It was a good card. Blinking stuff, countering stuff. Steven, what's your favorite card, dude?
Well, my favorite card's the only card we should have talked about, to be honest with you. Braided Net, for sure.
The only card we should have talked about? I mean, I'll agree it's a nice card, but come on. Lots of cards here.
Yeah, no, you get to draw a lot of cards with, the backside of Braided Net. You're right.
And that is going to do it for spoilers for today. Thank you so much for sticking around throughout this video. Let us know down in the comments below what your favorite card was that was spoiled over the course of the day today. As always, we love all the support that we get from you guys, but if you do want to pitch in a little bit more, we have recently started a Patreon. Make sure that you like this video and subscribe to us here on YouTube if you haven't done so already. And also make sure that you follow us on our other social media accounts. We are on Twitter, we are on TikTok, and we are also on Instagram. And until next time, this has been Guys at Magic. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.